What's up, everybody? We're here to go over UFC. Let's just call it UFC Austin. Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan, and I'm excited, man. Most of the cards that have been in Texas have been pretty exciting cards the past few years. So I'm looking forward to this. Unfortunately, even though I live down here in Texas, I'm not going to be able to make it to this one. Austin's a pretty good drive from where I live, so. But yeah, man, real quick, go over the results for last week as far as the betting goes. So I had a play on Nazim Sidekov. That, of course, that was a draw. That's 2 weeks in a row. I had money on a draw, and I honestly thought, Sidekov, he kind of screwed himself on that fight. Man, he had a clear advantage in the wrestling, and he didn't use it as much as he should have. He didn't try to use it all in the first round. Lost the first round. Dominated the second round. Of course, got a 10-8, and then in the last round, it was like he just kind of threw away that round. Trying to hurt um, Slava Claus, again on the feet. So I mean, I agree with it being the draw, man. It was either that or Nazim lost 2 rounds. So I mean, but it was a pretty dominant second round for him. So I understand, that it came out to be a draw. And as far as my other plays, originally I had a Steve Erceg and Mackenzie Dern parlay, and Steve Erceg's opponent got changed. So I ended up canceling that and getting my money back on that, cashing it out. If you use Bovada, they allow you to do that with your parlays and stuff. And I replaced it with a Jamal Emmers and Mackenzie Dern uh, parlay. And of course, Jamal Emmers won first fight of the night. When I during the second or during the first round of the Mackenzie Dern Jessica Andrade fight, I saw that Mackenzie Dern was definitely going to lose that fight. I could tell a few minutes in that she was going to get knocked out. So right at the end of round one, I hopped on there, and if you're quick enough, you can catch it on Bovada where they'll let you. Obviously you don't get all your money back. Like I had $1,000 on that 2 fight parlay, and I cashed it out for just over 700. But it was either that or lose all my money, that I had on that play, and I would rather take the little loss than because I knew Mackenzie Dern was going to lose. She didn't look anything like the fighter that dominated Angela Hill for 5 rounds, a few months back. So disappointed there, but other than that, I had a play on Tom Aspinall. That one hit. So I ended up coming out with a little bit of profit. Not very much, not enough to brag about, a couple $100, because it was only half unit play on Tom Aspinall, but he won very impressively. I was very happy for him, very excited to see him win. A lot of people were counting him out, man. So and yeah, man. So please like and subscribe. And if you're new to the channel, what I do is I go through and I give out all my picks for each fight, and then at the end of the video, I give out my bets for the card and my parlays. Um, and if you don't want to watch my videos, you just want to see my picks and my bets, you can go to my social medias. TikTok and Instagram are both highkick_fight picks, and then there's a Facebook group, High Kick Fight Picks on Facebook. It's easy to find. And this show is also available on Spotify, Pandora, Rumble, all your major streaming platforms. Not very many people listen to them on there. Most everybody's on YouTube. So yeah, man. So what else? What else? What else? What fights did we lose? We lost Jared Cannonier versus Roman Dolidze. Cannonier had a torn MCL. That sucks. That'd have been a fun fight, man. I really enjoy. I'm a big fan of Roman Dolidze's now. At first I didn't like him, but he's really grown on me. We're looking forward to seeing that fight. Hopefully he'll get an opponent, here pretty soon to jump in there with. Yeah, let's get into this. Let's get in this card, man. Some decent fights on this card. There's not a whole lot of super hard like leans that I have on this card, man. I mean, I got some bets in, but there's a lot of these fights that I kind of, I feel very iffy on, man. And I am picking a lot of underdogs on this card, which is probably part of the reason that I feel iffy about it. But but yeah, man, a lot of fights on this card where I'm not super confident, or I'm picking underdogs, so whatever. But either way, this is Ihor Poteria versus Rodolfo Bellato, and Poteria is 27 years old, 6'3" with a 75-inch reach. He is 20-4 and 1-2 in the UFC. And let me check and see if the odds are up for this one yet. They were not up, a few days ago when I was doing my notes and stuff. I should have checked before, but I always forget. So I would imagine that Bellato is going to end up being a favorite here. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah. So for whatever reason, they still don't have the odds on this fight up. Um, yeah, man. I mean, either way, I'm betting Bellato is going to be a decent favorite here. And but yeah, Poteria is this guy had like somewhat of a padded record, pretty much up until his fight in the Contender Series. He fought a lot of low level competition, had a lot of impressive victories, a lot of finishes and stuff like that, but just over guys that didn't have a lot of experience or anything like that. He has 9 wins by knockout, 7 wins by submission. Lots of early finishes in his career. We've never seen him in a third round in the UFC yet, and I don't think he's been to one very few times in his career. So he has shown to have problems with the takedown defense in the past. Was a master of sport in combat sambo, like most people from that part of the world. Started training at a very young age. The guy that he beat on the contender series was a pretty tough guy, an undefeated guy. So I mean, I guess that was a decent win. Puteria is very powerful, nice inside leg kicks, pretty fast hands. Can be pretty wild at times. He's coming off a knockout loss to Carlos Olberg, but Olberg's been finishing everybody, so I don't hold that against him too much. His Poteria's only win in the UFC was in Shogun Rua's retirement fight. So not really that impressive of a win because Shogun, should have retired many years ago. But this is a more of a winnable fight for Poteria. I mean, it's somebody that's got, a little more in his level of experience, as far as the level of competition and stuff like that. Um, he actually has the advantage of the UFC, experience in this matchup. His cardio hasn't looked very good in the past, man, but we'll see what improvements he's made. Maybe yeah, I would say that if his cardio was on point, I would be, a little bit more willing to pick him to win this fight. But we've seen him, when guys are holding him up against the cage, wearing on him, trying to take him down, he does gas out pretty quickly. So, and that's how I expect this fight to go. And Rodolfo Bellato is 27 years old. He's 6'3" with a 77.5-inch reach. He is 11-2, and this is going to be his UFC debut. And like I said, I'm willing to bet he's going to be the favorite. And this guy has been knocked out in both of his losses. And both times it was to Vitor Petrino, who's on a roll right now in the UFC. No shame there. Bellato has 6 wins by knockout, 4 wins by submission. He went 4-0 in the LFA, and he earned his contract after his second shot of the Contender Series. And yeah, he was a big underdog in that fight, man. He looked very good, and he's gonna have a 2.5-inch reach advantage in this fight. I think Bellato was the more well-rounded, in his style of fighting here. Dangerous jiu-jitsu, nice calf kicks, good takedown defense. Nice sprawls, good knees in the clinch. He was eating a lot of shots in his last fight on the Contender Series, but he ate them and kept coming, and eventually just wore that guy down. Keeping him in the clinch up against the cage, and just really really wearing on him. And I think Poteria actually has the better striking out of these two. But Bellato's pace and his cardio seems to be very on point, and he could come on late in fights. And if Poteria's cardio was more up to par, I might think about picking him here. But I think Bellato's gonna get the win here. I think he's gonna keep it in the clinch, wear on him, use his knees and elbows in close, and eventually get him down and get a submission in round two. Um, maybe like an anaconda choke. He has a really good anaconda choke or guillotine or something like that. Next up, we got Cody Brundage taking on Zachary Reese. And Brundage is 29 years old, 6 foot tall, with a 72-inch reach. He is 9-5 and 3-4 in the UFC, and he's a plus 235 underdog. Yeah, the only reason Cody is still in the UFC right now is because he won his last fight by disqualification. Aside from landing a big shot on Tresean Gore, he hasn't really looked good at all in the UFC, even in his wins, man. Because the Dolce fight, he was getting the crap beat out of him in that fight, man, and he ended up landing a guillotine choke, which saved him. But he's got a wrestling background. He's very explosive, at least for the first few minutes of the fight. His power lasts about that long as well. So, and his takedown defense has looked terrible for a guy with a wrestling background. There's not a lot I can say in favor of him in this fight, man. He does have the experience advantage. as far as in the UFC and just all around in his career, more fights. He has a nice guillotine choke, but not too many things I can say in his favor here. He's taking on Zach Reese. He is 29 years old, 6'4" with a 77-inch reach. He is 6-0, and this is his UFC debut, and he's a minus 275 favorite. And yeah, all his wins have been by finish, 4 knockouts, 2 submissions, very dangerous submissions. Fights out of Texas, so he's fighting close to home here. 4 inches of height and 5 inches of reach advantage in this fight. And the only loss he ever had was as an amateur to Kevin Holland. It was like his first amateur fight. There's not a lot of tape to watch on him that I could find. All his wins are pretty quick finishes. I'm pretty sure every single one of them is, as a matter of fact. Hasn't fought the best of competition, but he is very well rounded. Throws nice kicks. Does keep his chin up in the air a little bit too much. Very aggressive off of his back. This could be a fight where a guy, where Reese, is used to first round finishes and gets out there and then blows his load in the first round and then ends up, losing. We've seen it happen a lot of times with guys like this. But Brundage doesn't really have good cardio either. So, I mean, I'm not saying Reese has bad cardio or anything. I'm just saying that it's a possibility that something like that could happen. We've seen it happen with a lot of fighters like this that come in, first round finishes, quick, and then drop a fight to somebody they should have beat. But either way, man, I'm going to be going with Reese, man. I think I'm going to take him to win by first round knockout. He's a finisher. I think he's going to get a finish here too, man. He's got a big height and reach advantage, and very dangerous off of his back too. So if Cody uses his wrestling to get him down, that's right where Zack will want to be. So I don't see any way that Cody's going to be pulling out a victory in this fight, unless Reese gasses out in the first round and Cody somehow outlasts him, I guess. But I think Zack's got it. Next up, we got Steve Garcia taking on, I cannot say this guy's name, Melquizal Costa. Let's just call him Costa. Steve Garcia is 31 years old, 6 foot tall with a 73-inch reach. He is 14-5 and 3-2 in the UFC. And this is another one, man, that the odds weren't up yet, and I don't think they're up. I don't think they're up now either, man. I'll look real quick, but yeah, they're not up yet, man. There's a couple fights on here that the odds aren't up yet. And I'm interested to see who's going to be a favorite here. Steve Garcia's had 2, knockout wins in a row. So a lot of people might be wanting to jump on him there, but Costa's look very good as well. So I'm very curious to see what the line's going to be on that, and I'm very interested in having a play on this. It's just not available on the books I use yet. So. But yeah, man. So I didn't think much of Steve Garcia earlier on in his career, but he has showed to have some really nasty knockout power. He's fought a lot, man, in a lot of high level organizations. Bellator. He went 5-2 in Bellator. All his wins in the UFC have been by knockout. Altogether, he has 11 wins by knockout. He's never won a fight by submission. He has a couple inches of height at height advantage in here, but these guys have basically the same reach, so no advantage there. He has nice boxing. His best win was his last fight over Nuremberg. It was a nasty knockout, man. He came back. He almost got finished in that first round. So his other 2 wins were not over guys I think very highly of at all. Chase Hooper seems to be making a comeback now, but at the time he was looking pretty bad. Garcia does have a tendency to rush in and brawl, which is how he got knocked out by Machete. In his debut against Luis Pena, he got out grappled pretty dominantly. I do think that's one of the weaker parts of his game. But Luis Pena is a very big guy, so I mean I could understand that he had a little bit of trouble, staying on his feet with that guy. But yeah, Steve, he's got good cardio, man. And although he won his last fight, he almost got knocked out in the first round, like I said. And it says on the UFC site that he has 94% takedown defense. But we've seen him on his back in two of his fights in the UFC, and the other fights nobody was really trying to take him down. So I don't know that I really agree with him having that high of a takedown defense. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to me. Um, but yeah, man, he lands 4.85 strikes per minute, has a 44% takedown accuracy, and has very fast, nice kicks. Goes to the body a lot. A lot of He really pushes a tough pace, man. He's always moving forward, which can work for him and against him at the same time if he's against the right guy. He's not a bad fighter at all, man. Very experienced. And aside from Charlie Ontiveros, the Charlie Ontiveros fight, I've never really picked Garcia to win, but I am really starting to respect him, and I do find I do kind of struggle with this pick a little bit. He's taking on Costa. Costa is 27 years old, 5'10" with a 73-inch reach. He is 20-6 and 1-1 in the UFC. And once again, the odds aren't up yet. This guy's very experienced, man. He's fought a lot of tough guys outside the UFC. He has a big record for a young guy. Made his debut up a weight class against Thiago Moises. Didn't go his way, but he looked great in his last fight against Austin Lingo. Striking was very clean, very nice. He had 7 wins by knockout, 6 wins by submission. He's very well rounded, man. Great striking, good teep kicks. Used calf kicks very well in his last fight against Lingo. Was really busting up Lingo's leg bad, man. And he really digs his toes into the liver when he throws that teep kick to the body. Uses his jab very well. I think he's the more technical striker here for sure. Very good at going to the body with his kicks a lot to set up his head kicks. He landed a few of those in his last fight. Nice knees in close, throws very nice combinations. He landed over 50 strikes in the first round alone against Austin Lingo. And he's very accurate with his shots, has very nice footwork, switches stances very well. Um, I think he's the better grappler as well here, man. I wouldn't be shocked if Garcia got a knockout win here, landed a big shot, but I've got to go with Costa, man. I think he's going to catch Garcia rushing in with a good shot and get a finish. Let's just say round 2, because Garcia, his 2 losses in the UFC have been by knockout. So, and Costa does have the cleaner, straighter shots. So, I'm going with Costa. Next up, we got Wellington Turman taking on Jared Gooden. And Turman is 27 years old, 6 foot tall with a 72-inch reach. He is 18-7 and 3-5 in the UFC, and he's a minus 193 favorite. 4 wins by knockout, 8 wins by submission. He has good submission defense. He's never been submitted. He made the move down to 170 pounds in his last fight, and it didn't go his way, man. I think this guy used to fight at 205 at one point in his career. I'm not totally sure on that. I'm not. I think so though. And he just hasn't been able to find the success he's been looking for in any of the weight classes. His wins in the UFC have been over guys who are cut or retired now. I've just never been high on Turman. He's a big guy. He does have good jiu-jitsu. Not the best takedowns. He has 18% takedown accuracy, 45% takedown defense. He absorbs more strikes per minute than he lands, which isn't good. He was using nice leg kicks in his last fight against Randy Brown. He's been training with Alex Pereira. I'm sure he's been working real hard, making improvements. I guess he looked better in his last fight for the most part than he has up until, that that he had up at 185, really. I guess he looked decent. It wasn't like he got finished by Randy Brown. He had his moments. So he looked good aside from losing the decision to Randy Brown there. And he's taking on Jared Gooden. He is 29 years old, 6 foot tall with a 77-inch reach. He is 22-9 and 1-4 in the UFC, and he's a plus 168 underdog. And so, I know being 1-4 in the UFC, it sounds terrible, but let's look at who he's fought. Relatively short career in the UFC. This is his second run, but he fought Randy Brown, Abubakar Nurmagomedov, Alan Jouban, Carlton Harris. Who's on a really good run right now. These are all tough guys, man, and in at least 2 of these losses, the guy had to hold him down, just to get the win because they couldn't stay with him on the feet. So that's the way to beat Jared Gooden. Turman does have, he does have decent takedowns, I guess, but Gooden's really worked hard on his takedown defense. You could see it. You could see he's worked on it. If you watch his fights from when he was out of the UFC, for the brief period that he was, he went on to get a few knockouts. I liked what I've seen out of him. I've always kind of secretly been a fan of his, even though he's had not the best of career in the UFC yet. But he has big power, man. 11 wins by knockout, 7 wins by submission. This is his second shot in the UFC, like I said, and let's look at what he was doing, when he was out of the UFC real quick. Sorry, I'm kind of sick, man. A little bit out of it today. So he got cut after he went to a decision loss with Randy Brown, and then went on and beat beat Aaron Highbaugh in Icon FC. Curtis Millender, he knocked him out. He lost to Impa Kasanganai, which is a former UFC guy as well. He won against Doug Usher, and then he knocked out Demarcus Jackson in United Fight League. It says with a stomp. I don't know. I don't guess I've seen that one. But and then he lost his first fight back against Carlston Harris, and Carlston Harris is very good. So I don't hold that against him. He's a very well rounded guy. So he just had to hold Gooden down to get that win. And where was I at? Yeah, so Gooden's never been submitted. The UFC cut him, and brought him back. I think he's really worked hard on his takedown defense. He has nice boxing. He's more powerful. All he has to do is keep it on the feet here, in my opinion, and he could win. Am I super confident in this pick? No, I'm not. But I'm going to be taking the dog here in Gooden just because I've never been that high on Turman, man, and he doesn't show to have very good takedown accuracy in the UFC. He is a good grappler. It's just as far as the takedowns go, getting it to the ground has been his problem. So I'll take Gooden to win by using his 5-inch reach advantage and getting the knockout in round 2. Yeah, I've been feeling sick the last few days, man. But I did tell y'all in my last video that I was going to get back on track this week and get the video out on Thursday, at least Thursday. So I'm going to do it. So sorry if I do sound a little out of it today. And next up, we got Joe Solecki taking on Drakkar Klose. Um, Joe Solecki is 30 years old. He's 5'9" with a 70.5-inch reach. He is 13-3 and 5-1 in the UFC, and he's a -105, slight underdog. 1 win by knockout, 8 wins by submission. Has a very nice record, but aside from Jim Miller, all his wins have been over guys who are cut from the UFC now. Um, he has a half-inch reach advantage in this fight. He's an amazing grappler, very dangerous ground and pound. Averages 2.51 takedowns per 15 minutes. Only lands 2.24 strikes per minute on average, and has 50% takedown defense and accuracy, both. So I mean, this is going to be his toughest fight by far that he's had in the UFC. He's going to have to get this fight to the ground to win. Close has never been submitted. Solecki has very nice trip takedowns, good at controlling guys on the ground. Kind of one-dimensional though in his fighting style. That's his thing. He's a good grappler, and that's all. Yeah, very good grappling, dangerous submissions, man. That's how he fights. He's never haven't really seen too much of him using his stand up. In the UFC, it's mostly been um, submission victories, or I guess he has gone to a decision a few times, but he uses grappling, to get the wins. Um, and he's taking on Drakkar Klose. He is 35 years old, 5'9" with a 70-inch reach. He is 13-2-1 and 7-2 in the UFC, and he's a -115 slight favorite. Has a wrestling background, 69% takedown defense, has 5 wins by knockout, and he's never won or lost a fight by submission. He's fought the tougher competition out of these two. He fought Beneil Dariush, almost knocked out Beneil before getting knocked out himself. It was a crazy fight. He was out for a while after that. I think he had some injuries, and he's come back and looked pretty good. One knockout win and one unanimous decision over Rafa Garcia, who's very tough. He's the better, more powerful striker in this fight for sure. That's his advantage. He has had trouble in the past with really high level grapplers, but he's never been finished by submission. It's a tough pick, man. It's very good matchmaking. I could see this fight going either way. Klose does fight very well in the clinch. Nice uppercuts in close. I am going to be taking Klose here just because I've been more impressed with what I've seen out of him than I have with Solecki. I think maybe Klose will win this fight on damage with his power, and whatnot. But it's a close fight, man. Solecki did look very impressive in his last fight, but he was fighting a guy who was making his UFC debut on very short notice. So I don't know, man. I'm going with Klose. I'll take him to win by decision. Next up, we got Clay Guida taking on Joaquim Silva. And Clay Guida is 41 years old. He's almost 42 now. 5'7" with a 70-inch reach. He is 38-23 and 18-17 in the UFC, and he's a +180 underdog. And I'm a big fan of Clay's, man. I've been watching him fight for years and years, man, for a long time. And although he's getting towards the end of his career, he hasn't been getting finished here lately very much. And where he has had success late into his career like this, he's had success with his cardio. He's outlasted a couple of guys and got a few wins that maybe he shouldn't have. And he does have decent wrestling. He's never been a big power puncher in the UFC. Over 50 fights and only 5 knockouts. On his record. Does have 16 wins by submission, but he has also been submitted 11 times. So that's something to think about there. And he's going to have the cardio advantage here probably. Um, and maybe he can get the takedowns. He's going to have to if he wants to win this fight. But he will have a 1-inch reach advantage. He used a lot of movement on the feet, a lot of head movement. Never stops moving his head. As much as I would like to see Clay win this fight, I'm not sure he's going to be able to pull it off. And he's taking on Joaquin Silva. He is 34 years old, 5'8", with a 69-inch reach. He is 12-4 and 5-4 in the UFC, and he's a -210 favorite. Um, Silva's a very tough guy, man. He's had a lot of tough fights in the UFC. Most of his losses are to really tough guys. His last fight was against Tsarukyan on short notice, and he did land a good shot on Tsarukyan there in the first round. His fight before that, he beat Jesse Ronson. He fought Ricky Glenn. Nazareth Haparask. He beat Jared Gordon, knocked out Jared Gordon, years ago. This hasn't had a whole lot of super easy fights, man. He's very powerful and explosive. He's been finished 3 times in the UFC. Clay's not really a big finisher though. Silva has 7 wins by knockout, 3 wins by submission, and I think he wins this fight by probably submission. Maybe he hurts Clay and jumps on a choke. I just feel like at this point in Clay's career, man, the younger, more explosive guy is going to prevail here. I'm not saying Silva is super impressive or anything, but I think this is going to be one of the easier fights he's had in a while. So I expect him to come out with the win here, but you never know. But I think the younger guy is going to get the win here. Next up, we got Misha Tate taking on Julia Aliva. And Misha Tate is 37 years old, 5'6", with a 66.5-inch reach. She is 19-9 and 6-6 in the UFC, and she's a plus 130 underdog. And she's won 1-5 in her last 6 fights. And she's coming off a loss to Lauren Murphy. What does Misha Tate do well? I want to say not a whole lot, here lately, but we do have to consider that she hasn't had any easy fights recently. But I do feel like she's getting towards the end of the career, man, and she's taking on a girl here who hasn't fought in a few years, so maybe her activity, Misha Tate's activity, will help her out in this fight. She's always been known for her grappling. She has 4 wins by knockout, 7 wins by submission. She's been knocked out twice and submitted 3 times. Doesn't have the best striking, so if she can't get the takedown, she's usually gets pieced up on the feet. This fight is going to be at bantamweight. She's going up a weight class here, but I don't know if that's a good thing or not, man. Usually late into their career, when you see fighters flopping around in weight classes and whatever, it usually isn't going well. Her striking is a lot better than it used to be. You could definitely tell she's worked on it. Um, and she's taken on Julia Aliva, and she's 35 years old, 5'7", with a 69-inch reach. She is 9-2 and 3-1 in the UFC, and she's a -170 favorite. 4 knockouts and 2 submissions on her record. Like I said, hasn't fought in about 2.5 years. Really fast hands, nice striking. She's definitely gonna have the striking advantage in this fight. She's gonna be more powerful. She's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. She stays in her opponent's face, man. She does get pretty wild at times. Fights well in the clinch. Nice trip takedowns. Very good at transitioning to the back. She's very good, man. She's gonna have a 2.5-inch reach advantage. She's not afraid to get into a brawl. Like in the Eubanks fight. She would pop the jab a few times. Knock Eubanks back and then stay in the pocket and just throw flurries of punches. Did give up some takedowns in that fight, but she is dangerous off of her back as well. Nice front kicks up the middle. The only reason I'm not super confident in picking Julia here is that she's been out for a long time. But I do think she's going to win this fight, and I'm going to take her to win by decision. But yeah, man, she has been out a few years, so be careful. When anything can happen in these women's fights, man. Next up, we got Jamie Lynn Horth taking on Veronica Hardy. And Horth is 33 years old, 5'7" with a 67-inch reach. She is 6-0 and 1-0 in the UFC, and she's a minus 170 favorite as well. She will have 3 inches of height and 3 inches of reach advantage in this fight, and she's got 3 knockouts and 2 submissions on her record. Hasn't fought a lot of really tough competition. She does have some wins over Lupita Godinez when they were both amateurs way back in the day. She made her debut up at 135 pounds. She's going back down to 125 here. And she's going to be a pretty big bantamweight, man. Very tall, very strong. She throws nice combinations, mixes in the kicks very well. She was going to the body a lot in her last fight against Haley Cohen, which I'm not very high on Haley Cohen, so whatever. But yeah, Horth is very strong in the clinch, uses her underhooks very well. Nice takedown defense so far. I expect her size advantage to play a big role in this fight. And yeah, man, not much more to say as far as, as little as we've seen out of Horth fighting, good competition. Um, it's hard for me to say for sure one way or another, that she's good at some things and good at other things. I mean, they all seem good until they get into the UFC and start fighting, tough competition. But I think she might have a lot of advantages in this fight based on what I've seen. And she's taking on Veronica Hardy. She is 28 years old, 5'4" with a 64-inch reach. She is 7-4-1 and 2-4 in the UFC, and she's a plus 130 underdog. And yeah, she lost to a fighter who was 1-0 at the time. That was a few years ago, and she was out for a while after that and came back, and she looked really good against Juliana Miller, but Miller has not looked good at all in the UFC against anybody she's fought. Hardy did dominate that fight everywhere, but Miller just wasn't doing anything right there. And but yeah, Hardy has nice boxing. She seemed to have made a lot of improvements in her timeout. Her power looked on point. Her grappling looked great. But Horth is a lot better than Miller, man, and is way bigger and stronger. I would rather see Veronica Hardy win this fight, but I'm going to be going with Horth to win by decision. I just think she's going to be too big and strong for Hardy. But once again, anything can happen in these women's fights, man. Next up, we got Punahele Soriano taking on Dustin Stolfitz. And Soriano is 31 years old, 5'11" with a 72.5-inch reach. He is 9-3 and 3-3 in the UFC. And he's a minus 280 favorite. And Soriano is another guy that I said I would never pick or put money on again. After he gassed out in half a round in his last fight. But they were putting me in a position here where I may have to pick him. He's very powerful. He throws everything into his shots. He's gave up some takedowns in the past, man, but he's pretty good at scrambling back to his feet. I like Soriano. I think he has tons of potential. He just needs to slow down and throw some jabs, ease into the fight, and make it out of the first round, conserve some energy, and he's a good striker, man. The KO, the knockout will come. He doesn't have to chase it, and I'm sure he and his camp both know that. I'm sure that's something they're working on. He's very exciting to watch, but it won't matter if he gasses out in the first round and loses because then we won't see him anymore. I'd like to see him stay in the UFC. This is a winnable fight for him for sure. He's the way better striker here, way more powerful. He's got 6 wins by knockout, 2 wins by submission. He should absolutely win this fight, man. I hope they've worked hard on the cardio, man. I'd hate to see him lose to Stoltzfus, but yeah, and Dustin Stoltzfus is 32 years old. 6 foot tall with a 75-inch reach, 14-5 and 1-4 in the UFC. It's a plus 240 underdog. And yeah, this guy hasn't really looked good at all in the UFC. He had 1 win over Dwight Grant, and I don't think Dwight Grant's in the UFC anymore. I'm pretty sure he's not. Stoltzfus has been finished 3 times in the UFC. He's supposedly a great grappler, but we haven't really seen that in the UFC. He's got 2 wins by knockout, 5 wins by submission. And he has a height advantage and 2.5-inch reach advantage here as well. But he's not going to want to stay on the feet with Soriano for sure. Soriano will definitely put this guy away on the feet. And Stoltzfus has 35% takedown accuracy, 46% takedown defense, lands only 2.96 strikes per minute, but he absorbs 3.28 strikes per minute, which isn't good. Soriano has the advantage in the numbers as well. I think Dustin will be able to. I don't think Dustin's going to be able to get him down. I'm definitely taking Soriano to win. In the way that he fights, I'm assuming it's going to be a first round knockout. Next up, we got Shawn Brady taking on Kevin Gastelum. Shawn is 31 years old, 5'10 with a 72.5-inch reach. He is 15-1 and 5-1 in the UFC. He's a minus 125 favorite. And I'm a big fan of Shawn's, man. He's a very good grappler, dangerous submissions, 3 wins by knockout, 4 wins by submission. He's a big guy, man. I've noticed that a lot of his fights, man, in the third down, he seems to slow way down. But he has won most of those fights, so I can't say too much about it really. But yeah, man, I think he jumped way up in competition, just way too fast. It's a big jump to go from Michael Chiesa to Bilal Muhammad. Bilal had a lot of success just pressuring Brady and keeping him backing up, throwing lots of volume. Shawn does like to sit back and counter a lot. I don't think he's going to be able to get the takedowns in this matchup. Kevin has a wrestling background, very good takedown defense. This fight may end up playing out on the feet, man, and his Brady's striking did look pretty good earlier, early on in his last fight. Brady has 50% takedown accuracy, 88% takedown defense, lands 4.17 strikes per minute, absorbs 3.86 strikes per minute. Pretty close there. That's probably from the Bilal Muhammad fight, though, mostly. Brady's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage in this fight. And, yeah, man, I mean, I would like to see Sean Brady win this fight. But I don't know, man. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard to pick against Kevin Gastelum in this fight, man. Kevin's 32 years old. He is 5'9" with a 71.5-inch reach. He is 18-8 and sorry, 18-8 and 12-8 in the UFC. He's a plus 103 underdog. He's never been knocked out. He has 5 wins by knockout and 5 wins by submission. At one point I thought Kevin was going to be done in the UFC, man, but he looked real good in his last fight, man. He spent his whole career fighting guys that are way bigger than him. He's fought a lot of the best guys in the world, so no shame in a lot of those losses. He fought at 170 back in the day, and he's going back down here. He has great footwork. He throws a lot more kicks than Brady does. Has a major speed advantage in this fight for sure. Really nice boxing, throws nice combinations, very good at moving in and out of the pocket. He has nice calf kicks. He looked really great in his last fight, man. And, aside from he did headbutt Chris Curtis in that fight and it dropped Curtis or whatever, but even, aside from that, he was looking really good in that fight. And he doesn't get tired, man. In my opinion, he's a lot better on the feet here. He puts out a ton of volume, has really nice timing. He looks very light on his feet, man. He has 63% takedown accuracy, defense, and he averages 1 takedown per 15 minutes. If the same Gastelum shows up that fought Chris Curtis, I'm going to say he wins. Say he picks up the pace throughout the fight, pressures Shawn and really wears on him. I think Shawn will probably have some success early, but Kevin will eventually take over and overwhelm him. And I want Brady to win more so here. I'm more of a fan of his, but I'm going to be going with the dog here, and I'm going to take Kevin Gastelum to win by decision. Next up, we got Rob Font taking on Devin Figueiredo. Rob is 36 years old, 5'8", with a 71.5-inch reach. He is 20-7 and 10-6 in the UFC. He's a minus 175 favorite. And Rob's a very good fighter, man, and really nice boxing. I don't care if he's 1-3 in his last 4, man. He's been fighting all the best guys in the division. He's going to be the way bigger guy here. 9 wins by knockout, 4 wins by submission, 3.5-inch reach advantage. He's a great counter striker, very technically sound with his hands. Keeps those elbows tucked in where they're supposed to be. Uses his jab very well. Knocked out Adrian Yanez, man, and Yanez is a very tough guy. Rob Font's never been knocked out, only been submitted once. Great uppercuts. You just can't rush in with your chin up in the air against him, man, because he will catch you. He lands 5.71 strikes per minute. Never really goes for takedowns. It's not really the way he fights. I'm pretty sure this fight is going to play out on the feet. And I expect him to put out a lot more volume in this matchup than Figueiredo. And there's just a lot of unknowns here with, Figueiredo coming up to 135, man. And Figueiredo's 35 years old, 5'5", with a 68-inch reach. He is 21-3-1 and 10-3-1 in the UFC. And he's a plus 145 underdog. I'm a big fan of both these guys, man. It's crazy that Figueiredo has only fought Brandon Moreno for the past 3 years. That's the only person he's fought. And, he didn't look like himself in his last fight, and I think the weight cut was just getting to be way too much for him. 9 wins by knockout, 8 wins by submission. He does everything well, man. He has great power. He's very dangerous, everywhere. But the roles are going to be reversed here, man. He's going to be at a major size disadvantage, man, and he's not used to that. And you know, the the numbers for both these guys are pretty close, man. Pretty close to even. Figueredo has a little bit better takedown defense, according to the numbers. I'm excited to see Figueredo up at 135, but I honestly don't see this fight going his way really at all. I could be wrong. I think Font has the better striking, and that's where the fight's going to take place. So I'm going to take Font to win this fight by decision. Next up, we got Khalil Roundtree taking on Azamat Murzakanov. And Roundtree is 33 years old, 6'1", with a 76.5-inch reach. He is 12-5 and 8-5 in the UFC, and he's a plus 120 underdog. Yeah, Roundtree is on a good run, even though I thought he lost the Dustin Jacoby fight. He's got big power in his hands, nasty elbows and knees. We've seen him take guys out with his kicks, man, with that nasty, like, I'm not sure what to call it. It's escaping my mind right now. That kick that he took out Modestus Bukakis with, that front kick to the, I don't know if that's an oblique kick. Maybe that's what that is. Right to the knee that messed up Modestus's leg and took him out of that fight. Very good Muay Thai, man. Khalil has really put it together. Lately he used to have fights where he would kind of go out and underperform or not throw enough volume, or he would hurt guys and let them off the hook. But in his past 4 fights, man, he's been locked in. And even though I thought he lost the Jacoby fight, it was a close fight. He did very well. He's a very strong, explosive guy, man. Seems like a real nice guy. I listened to the Joe Rogan episode that Joe did with him. He's very interesting. We've seen him struggle at times with wrestling, but I don't think that's going to be a worry here. He counters very well. He's at his best when he's the one pushing forward, keeping his opponents backing up. He's never really shot a takedown in the UFC. He's got 56% takedown defense, and I don't think he's going to have to worry about takedowns in this fight. I think he definitely has the cardio advantage, and he also has a 5-inch reach advantage. He's taking on Azamat Murzakanov. He is 34 years old, 5'10", with a 71.5-inch reach. He is 13-0 and 3-0 in the UFC. Yeah, 3-0 in the UFC, and minus 145 favorite. Yeah, this guy is kind of hard for me to get behind, just because we've seen him go out and have trouble in a few of these fights. Like the Nchekwu fight, he was on his way to losing that fight until he landed the knee in the third round. Dustin Jacoby hurt him in the third round and kind of made the wrong decision. Dustin let him off the hook. Dustin hurt him, and then all of a sudden started trying to wrestle rather than making him get back up and trying to finish him. So he kind of got let off the hook there, and he looked gassed out in the third round a few times. He hits very hard, 9 knockouts and 1 submission on his record. He's not a big light heavyweight. He could probably fight at middleweight if he wanted, but he finds ways to win. He has done that, and he has nice in and out footwork, throws sneaky elbows. It's just his power sets him apart from everybody else, man. He is very powerful. Lands 4.57 strikes per minute, 83% takedown defense. Hasn't fought any really good wrestlers yet. Doesn't throw a whole lot of volume, but he does make them count with his power. And I don't know if anyone else agrees, but I think Roundtree could win this fight, man. And I think, Roundtree has the power to hurt Azamat back. I don't know, man. I know he's undefeated. I know Azamat's undefeated and everything, but I have seen him make mistakes in fights, and eventually it's going to catch up with him. But I'm going to go with Roundtree to win this fight. I think he's going to use the clinch and wear on Azamat, slow him down. Not super confident in this pick. Probably won't put any money on it, but I'm going to take Roundtree to win. Taking to win by knockout. Round 3. Next up, we got Dan Hooker taking on Bobby Green. Hooker is 33 years old, 6 foot tall, with a 75.5-inch reach. He is 23-12 and 13-8 in the UFC. He's a minus 150 favorite. Dan has 11 wins by knockout, 7 wins by submission. I don't understand how this fight isn't just a pick'em, really. I think this is a pretty close fight. I thought Dan was, probably done a while back when he got knocked out a few times in a row, but he looked good and tough in his last fight, that war with Jalen Turner. The Claudio Puellas fight, we found out that Puellas couldn't strike at all, so it was not really that impressive of a win because, he just had nothing for Dan Hooker at all. I think Dan is better with his kicks in this matchup, but I don't think he has the advantage with the hands. And he is a great kickboxer, man. I've always enjoyed his fights. He's very good with his knees and elbows, tall and rangy. He's going to have a 4.5 inch reach advantage in this fight. Uses his length very well, man, and very good at circling away from the big shots. You know, uses good uses good teep kicks. Fights well from the outside, just kind of picking at his opponents. Shows 81% takedown defense. Lands just over 5 strikes per minute. Absorbs almost the same amount. Uh, and then he has a 34% takedown accuracy. Um, his kicks are some of his best weapons. Those could, be a big factor in this fight if he wins it. He has definitely taken a lot of damage in his last 6 fights or so that's one thing that scares me about picking him. He's taking on Bobby Green. He is 37 years old, 5'10 with a 71-inch reach. He is 31-14-1 and 12-9 in the UFC, and he's a plus 123 underdog. And I'm a big fan of Green, man. I was super excited when he knocked out Dawson in a few seconds in his last fight. He's looked really good, man, and he always has. He's always had some of the best boxing in the sport, man. He's so good at rolling with punches and creating angles, and swinging up from the hips so you can't see where the punches are coming from. And his power has actually looked a lot better than ever, in his last few fights. He lands a lot of volume, very technical, great head movement and striking defense, really fast hands. Lands over 6 strikes per minute, 74% takedown defense. I can't say enough good things about his boxing and his countering and everything. This is a pretty hard fight for me, man. I understand why everybody's going with Hooker, I guess. But I didn't pick Green last time, and he shocked the world, so I'm going to pick him this time, man. I don't care. And I'm going to take Green to win by out-voluming Hooker. This is a 5-round fight. I think that could help Bobby. And maybe he'll get a late finish. Maybe he wins a decision. But, I think he could definitely take over in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round here. So I'll take Green. Next up, we got the main event, Beneil Dariush taking on Arman Tsarukyan. Dariush is 34 years old, 5'10 with a 72-inch reach. He is 22-5-1 and 16-5-1 in the UFC. He's a plus 155 underdog. And so, man, if I hadn't seen his last fight, I probably would have picked him here. But he's very well rounded. He's a very high level grappler. He hits hard. 5 wins by knockout, 8 wins by submission. Both these guys are very good grapplers and have good takedown defense. I think this fight comes down to who's better on the feet and who's got the better cardio. And yeah, Arman Tsarukyan is 27 years old, 5'7 with a 72.5-inch reach. He is 20-3 and 7-2 in the UFC, and he's a minus 185 favorite. 8 wins by knockout, 5 wins by submission. He's never been submitted, hasn't been knocked out since 2015 at the beginning of his career. And I thought he won the Gamrot fight. I thought that was a bad decision. He's a very good wrestler. I think he has will have the advantages here in the cardio and the striking. He hits very hard. He's younger. He's going to be constantly improving, and I definitely going to go with Arman Tsarukyan here. I'm going to take him to win. Oh, man, I guess I'll take him to win by a late finish. Maybe 3rd, 4th round knockout. I don't know if he's going to be able to get Dariush down. Dariush has got very good takedown defense, but Dariush is coming off a knockout loss. Arman hits very hard. I think Arman's definitely deserves a shot at the title. I think he deserves to fight Makhachev. So they already fought once. I think they should fight again. I'd love to see that. But I'm taking Arman Tsarukyan. And, man, that's it for my picks. I'm sorry, dude. My voice has been fighting me this entire video. I keep having to stop and come back and stop and come back. But yeah, man, as far as my bets go, I've got a play on Kevin Gastelum at plus 103. That's a half unit play. Got a 1 unit play on Rob Font at minus 175. And then I've got a Arman Tsarukyan and Joaquin Silva 2-fight parlay. That's a plus 124. That's a half unit. And as far as parlays go, I've got a 4-fight parlay, which is Silva, Sorano, Tsarukyan, and Font. That's plus 356. And then to that, I added Zack, Reese, and Kevin Gastelum That's a plus 1,176. That's a 6-fight parlay. Leave them up for just a second in case y'all want to see them. And then to that, I added Horth and Jared Gooden, and that turns it into a plus 5,450. And then to that, I added Drakkar Klose and Bobby Green, and that makes it a plus 23,132. Yeah, man, that's it for my bets and my picks, guys. I really appreciate all you guys. Thank you for caring what I have to say. Please like and subscribe. And yeah, sorry that I don't know if I got COVID or what, but I'm sure my voice is probably pretty terrible on this. I tried to take out as much of my voice messing up as I could and redo it, but um, but yeah, man, good luck, guys. Win some money, and y'all have a good one. I'm out of here, man.